Joining us here in the studio to discuss these latest developments is Faisal Al Mudahka, Editor-in-Chief at Gulf Times here in Qatar. Paul Musgrave is Associate Professor of Government at Georgetown University, also in Qatar. And in Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh, we have Abdulaziz Algashian, Senior Non-Resident Fellow at the Gulf International Forum. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. Some fast-moving developments these last few hours. Faisal, let me start with you. The Iranian strategy now seems to have shifted to targeting the Gulf region's energy assets, not just U.S. assets in the region. Just how dangerous a moment is this in your view?
You know, I think the Iranian government have a disconnection from reality. They live in a bubble, and they think alone, and that's one thing. I want to refer on Araqji interview yesterday when he bombed Oman and bombed Qatar, and then he called the foreign ministers and telling them, well, this order has been done before. So are they working on a will? So my personal observation that there is a disconnection between the political party and the revolution
which is quite concerning, isn't it?
Very concerning, because and again, imagine three layers of leaders has been
decapitated.
Yeah, and then you have maybe the third layers are acting on a reckless. Going back to the energy, Iran have done this during the Iranian history, which they called it the Vassals' War, where they used oil. So it's part of their philosophy of using energy, and they're not hiding it. They are doing it. They said that we're going to close Hormuz. It's not the first time. So and again, they have this a very strange argument that we are targeting Qatar, but we are not targeting the base, even though His Highness, all the leader of the Gulf have insisted to the United States that this bases will not be used as a third party. But it seems that there is a disconnection from reality or denial of reality.
Right. Abdulaziz, before I bring you in, I just want to show our viewers the energy installations and transport facilities Iran has targeted these last few hours. Explosions were reported at Ras Laffan Industrial City in Qatar. It houses two major LNG refineries as well as energy processing infrastructure. The Ras Tanura plant in Saudi Arabia is one of the world's largest oil refineries. It handles more than 500,000 barrels a day. And in Dubai, debris from an attack fell near Jebel Ali port, disrupting energy and logistics operations. In the Gulf of Oman, a projectile hit an oil tanker transporting crude, while another tanker caught fire after an attack in the Strait of Hormuz. Abdulaziz Algashian in Riyadh, are we in a new escalation phase now with Iran targeting these energy infrastructures across the region?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me, and it's good to join you and join your guests. I would say we are heading towards we're heading towards that. You know, we're heading towards some sort of escalation, and it's unfortunately taking a trajectory that's not very healthy, and it's very concerning, and it's something that I think all GCC states wanted to avoid. There were I think the million-dollar question that's been asked here, and I wonder if you all agree with me or not, but the million-dollar question that's been asked is really, what is the threshold of GCC states? What will it be for them to really enter into the operation and begin to attack Iran? And I think, to be honest with you, firstly, there is no real direct or clear-cut position on this. It will be very much of an assessment. Secondly, I think it will also be depending on two variables. One variable will be the duration of the war in itself, which today, listening to Donald Trump and the Secretary of War, the duration seems to be going on for some weeks, which is concerning, which means that these operations will continue. Secondly, I think the intensity of these operations by Iran to attack this infrastructure is another concern. These things seem to be increasing. We just don't know. However, I think if these operations are going to increase, then we're going to see a sort of GCC forward defense, some sort of operation where they will go and will try to assert deterrence and try to basically signal and create a precedent of defense that if Iran, since all these things that I think the Iranian regime is doing is signaling some sort of precedence that they will take action if they are hit. We, the GCC, also have to create some sort of precedence that this cannot be tolerated.
Okay.
So I think this is the discussion and the dilemma that we're facing now.
Let's bring in Paul Musgrave. What do you make of what Abdulaziz said there? And what do you think? He asked an important question. What is the threshold for GCC countries now that their assets, their infrastructure is directly being hit by Iran?
Well, I think that there's a lot of steps that Gulf states can take before they directly engage in the U.S.-Israeli war. For one, just as Britain is now allowing its bases to be used against missile launchers and missile sites in Iran, GCC states might want to consider allowing the U.S. to use bases and airfields here, which are already being attacked, to carry out similar missions. They could also re-intensify their ability to bring in external powers. We heard Prime Minister Starmer saying that Gulf leaders had lobbied him to have Britain take a more active role. And of course, they can intensify their diplomatic efforts. But taking a direct role in this war would breach yet another red line. And I think that's something that people would be very, very cautious about.
Faisal, your thoughts. What is the red line for Gulf states and how do they respond to Iranian attacks? I mean, they have to at some point defend themselves, right? But how do they defend themselves without directly getting involved into the conflict?
It's not our war. This is not our war. This is Israel and Iran war and the United States. And I think even between Israel and the United States, they have a different objective. Netanyahu is another guy who lives in a bubble, who has a philosophy of Israel the Grand, and he has his own going from war to war and creating. He is as the Iranian part of this chaos. The U.S. I think and the Gulf share this nuclear weapon, and I think if you go back to the Omani deal, it's better than Obama. The Gulf shares the dialogue and peace. We are not into war. 50 years of chaos in this region. Iran can be better. They have oil, they have gas. I mean, they should go back to reality. That's what
Qatar has been a key mediator in the talks and a key mediator in this region. Are there, Faisal, lines of communication open right now between the Iranians and Qatar? And is there still hope to de-escalate as far as the Qataris?
I think after this plain diplomacy is always open. I'm not an official, but I know going back, we seen the bad side from Israel and Iran, right? In Qatar here. The problem that each time we reach to a deal, which was, historical wise, and Hamas, Qatar have stopped the 12 days war. I think the gate of diplomacy is open. The GCC, there are 6 countries, they share the same objective. And I think it is possible. It is possible.
Abdulaziz, do you agree with that? Are the gates of diplomacy still open as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned?
Well, I think when it comes to, firstly, I just want to say before I answer that question, I agree with a great deal of what was said before. I think what the Saudis and the ruling elites in the Gulf monarchies have in their advantage is wisdom, forbearance, and restraint. And I think this is going to be exercised to the maximum. I think when it comes to the open door diplomacy or the diplomacy, I think diplomacy, we have seen in the region that it is an essential tool of security, not necessarily out of love and not necessarily out of just trying to really seek out as any kind of normative approach, but diplomacy, and this rapprochement that preceded this, the era that we're finding ourselves in now, was really motivated by security. So I think that will not change. What I do think will change will be the mode of diplomacy. I think before, there was a diplomatic rapprochement, at least from the Saudi perspective, of really engaging Iran and knowing that Iran, trying to accommodate some of the security anxieties that Iran had. Now, I think Saudi Arabia invested a great deal of effort and energy in that process. A process really that one can say was akin to a psychologist treating some sort of patient with severe anxiety disorder. It was a very meticulous process. But I think now the Saudis and others are very furious that all that diplomacy was upended. And it was upended, just to speak to what the both gentlemen were saying earlier. It was not only because of Iran, it was also because of the strikes of Israel and the United States.
Indeed.
This is why they were lobbying hard before not to do this.
Right.
So right now, I think there's going to be a posture that's going to be more geared, or diplomacy that's going to be more geared towards de-escalation, keeping threats at bay, but also an international diplomacy that's going to try to galvanize people, isolate Iran diplomatically, or apply pressure on it, but also increase its posture in the region. And I think personally, we are heading towards a gradual militarization, because the assertion of deterrence is not going to be via alliances. I think it's going to be via capabilities. And I think this is where we're heading now.
Gentlemen, I want to play you a short soundbite of President Trump, who spoke a little while ago for the first time since the U.S.-Israeli operation against Iran began. He says that the U.S. plans for Iran were ahead of schedule. Let's take a listen.
Somebody said today, they said, oh, well, if the president wants to do it really quickly, after that he'll get bored. I don't get bored. There's nothing boring about this. Do you agree with that, Pete? I don't think there's anything, Mr. General. I think there's nothing boring about it. Somebody actually said from the media, I think he'll get bored after about a week or two. No, we don't get bored. I never get bored. If I got bored, I wouldn't be standing here right now, I guarantee you that, to go through what I had to go through. We also projected 4 weeks to terminate the military leadership, and as you know, that was done in about an hour, so we're ahead of schedule there.
Paul Musgrave, did you get a sense from President Trump there that he had a clear game plan, a longer-term plan?
No, I don't think he does. Over the course of the day, from President Trump, from Defense Secretary Hegseth, we've seen the United States open the door to potentially having boots on the ground, which initially was something the United States would not happen. The timeline has lengthened from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, maybe 5. President Trump has said that the greatest strikes are ahead of us, and he offered several different rationales for what's going on, from the nuclear program to sinking the Iranian Navy. This does not say to me there's a single plan.
Do Gulf countries have the leverage with the Trump administration right now to tell him basically, you need to hold the brakes here, we need to reassess the situation? Do they have enough leverage at this point?
I think that the Gulf states have a lot of leverage. I don't think that anyone has the leverage to stop the United States right now. Stopping this would be difficult politically for the president. What they can do is incline the United States to do certain things instead of others, to build a coalition, to maybe change the targeting set, change the order of those priorities. Because one of the things that we living here in the Gulf have realized is that Iran's conventional capabilities are pretty fierce on themselves, and moving towards something that degrades those capabilities might be in the interests of the people living here, and also might push toward a ceasefire or an acceptable outcome for all parties.
All right, Faisal, what leverage do Gulf countries, does a country like Qatar have today to de-escalate the situation?
The North Field. North Field, the stop of the North Field, it became
This is a gas pipeline that Iran and Qatar share, of course.
It fueled Japan, it fueled China, it's already creating a world crisis. This field, and also Ras al-Nur, this never happened since 1973. Are the U.S. is ready to push it for 90 days to increase, and with the inflation we have? I don't think Netanyahu will supply some gas to the world. So this is a very, very critical moment. Secondly, I think things to watch also is President Putin calling His Highness and condemning the Iranian, which is the biggest ally of Iran.
Indeed.
So those two things, I think, can change the reality and change the schedule. All
right, Abdulaziz Algashian in Riyadh, your final thought. What leverage do Gulf countries have today to de-escalate this situation, and can it be de-escalated?
In my opinion, and I'll make this very brief, I think the leverage that the Gulf states have is really trying to leverage their ability to invest in the United States, their financial leverage, to be a hub in the region of investment and facilitating investment worldwide. I think this is precisely where the leverage is. But this has to be delivered in a manner and communicated in a manner that kind of necessitates regional security. This is precisely, I think, the approach that they will try to use. This is the leverage that they, I think, have. And I think by communicating to Donald Trump and telling him, listen, you have, you're someone who likes to do business, and this is really not good business for us, which means it's not good business for you. And I think that's the angle that where people will use their leverage that we have here.
All right, Abdulaziz Algashian in Riyadh, thank you very much. Faisal Al Mudahka in Doha and Paul Musgrave, thank you to all three of you for joining us on Al Jazeera.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.